Time is X minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It's the Rocket Hour. Y'all are now tuned in. Time to hit the pick four that you'd love to win. If your money's coming slow, step on the faster track with your host, Ricky Pasternak. Let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Rocket Hour. I'm not joined by my co-host, Mr. Aaron Halterman. As you could tell, he has not changed. This is Curtis Magic Kalleward. Curtis, how you doing this morning? I know it's a little early your time.
I know. You're going to see me drinking a lot of coffee this morning. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be your first guest, I guess, after Aaron's is he busy driving to New York right now? If he can survive the drive through Cleveland, that is.
Yeah, well, real quick, it's nice that he was able to make it 4 episodes without taking a work break. Let's say he's on work vacation. But no, yeah, it's great to have you on. If you guys saw the video playing, that was all Curtis Magic himself. Ryan Stillman played the song. That was the first thing I kind of talked about on the first episode, that we were going to kind of have the song and the video, and luckily Magic was able to put that together for us. So we're really appreciative of it. Aaron, I'm sure we'll see it at some point. I'm sure he's going to be appreciative of it. It looked great. And that's what we need here, something to spice things up a little bit. So we'll do things a little bit differently. We're going to talk about some stakes action that we saw over the weekend, including one Tis a Magician, and I'll let Magic really kind of take that gate to wire, as we like to say. And, we'll kind of just break things down a little bit, and then we'll get into 2 pick 4 sequences, mine and Magic's. Obviously, you guys know that Aaron kind of does things on a more of an individual race basis, but that's okay here. You can kind of just break our tickets apart and kind of do your own thing. So we'll get into it real quick. Obviously, we'll, break down the stakes action from Saturday first, and we'll start right with it. I mean, Magic, walk us through this one, because Tis a Magician really, really looked like a different runner, not having run since September. Kind of tell me what you were expecting as a part owner, and all those things, all the excitement, all the emotions you were feeling on Saturday.
Yeah, it's boy, this is fun. I get to talk about Tis a Magician right off the bat in 2 straight shows. I started off the Magic Mike show on Monday talking about it too. I'm still excited about it. It was great. We figured out by now he has 1 chance to win, and that's if he gets to the lead right away. And so 3 races back, when Drayden Van Dyke rode him for the first time, he put him straight on the lead, and nobody was able to touch him. And then the Tokyo City Cup, they put him on the lead. Mile and a half might have been a little bit too long for him, but he looked good. He didn't quit hard at all, which was nice to see. And then this one was unbelievable. He'd been training really well. The original plan after his last start in September was to go to the Breeders' Cup Marathon race, and he had a little tiny nick come up on his hoof, and so we'll just back off. He's still 3 years old. We don't have to rush him into this. And Mandela, man, he's a magician. You give him this time off and to really work with a horse, and Tis a Magician does this. He's got some fight in him. And that's probably his best trait, is that he's got a lot of fight in him. An issue that we had with him earlier in his career was that he just doesn't love to pass horses. He loves to run. He can run all day. He just doesn't always love to pass horses. And so that's why it's key to get him on the front end. I didn't talk about this on the Magic Mike show. It's real shitty what happened to Drayden Van Dyke. He actually got fined $1,000 for this ride. There's a new whip rule in California. If you're unaware that you can only do 6 strikes total in a race, you can't do more than 2 in succession, and they all have to be underhanded. And so, there is the part of me that says, the animal welfare part of me that's like, look, nobody visually likes to see the horses get stripped. And even though these crops that they have are basically like pool noodles on a stick right now that the jockeys are using, it isn't causing pain. It's creating a noise that pops, and that's supposed to, the horses are trained when they hear that pop to try and run faster. So now you're asking jockeys to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the middle of a race when these horses are going 40 miles an hour and you're on top of barely hanging on, in the irons like that. So a little crazy that happened to Drayden. But overall, we're real happy with Tis a Magician's effort. And it looks like the San Pasqual Stakes are going to be the next stop for him, probably the end of the month.
Yeah, and so we learned 2 things, right? Well, I should say a few, at least from my end. Obviously, Magic himself is all on this horse in terms of, training, things like that. And as an owner, you should be, right? There you go. And there you're showing the hat. It's one of those things, like if you're an owner, I don't, tell me if I'm wrong, Magic, but it's almost like it's your kid, something that you really have full action in, whether it's 0.1%, whether it's 100%. It's like you almost take it personally. So you kind of want to know everything that's going on. Obviously not like minute by minute, but day by day or week by week, what were the course of action for a stakes race, or how he's training, he or she is training, I should say. So we just learned a couple things. And if you are against the whip rule, that's fine. We're not going to sit here and tell you shouldn't be. But as Magic kind of described, there are different rules now that riders need to really pay attention. It's one thing, you're driving your car, you're changing the radio station, as a lot of us do, or the air, anything like that. Now they're supposed to count how many times. It's just really difficult. And I think you might see a few of these riders just take some more time to adjust. That's not mean they're trying to get by, that they're not, nothing like that. It's just they haven't done this. If they haven't been taught to do this their entire lives or multiple years, it's going to take some time. And I think you might see some of these fines that come up, and it's not due to poor riding or them trying to get away with it. It's more so they're learning on the fly. I assume, Magic, tell me if I'm wrong, I guess it's a 2021 rule with the 6 strikes.
They implemented it right.
Relatively recently.
Yeah, it was either late last fall. I think it was right around the time Los Al started back up at the beginning of December. So yeah, they've had a month maybe, and they've known for another month or two prior to that. It might have been at the Del Mar Fall Meet, but the point, to your point, yeah, it's only been around for a couple of months, and I've talked to a few of them, and they want to stay within the rules. Drayden doesn't want. I'm pretty sure Drayden probably didn't make much more than $1,000 for winning that race. So for him to win the race and then just turn the paycheck over to the stewards, he doesn't want to do that.
Right, exactly. To your point, this is money coming out of their pocket. This might not be like, an NFL fine where the team covers it. It's like, look, you're fine, you're covering it. So to your point, it's not like they're trying to win a race and, pay the money up front. And again, it's, we've talked about this before. Los Al, I'm a big Ricky Gonzalez fan. Some of these riders just kind of took a couple weeks off and kind of took their minds to refresh. So they haven't even been necessarily used to it. So to your point, there'll be some things that are changing here in 2021. Especially at Santa Anita as we kind of move along the meet. So it's just one thing to keep in mind if you weren't aware of the whip rule. So, to kind of sum things up, Tiz Magician might be in for a big campaign. As Magic said, he's, hopefully scheduled to run in a stakes race, moving forward. So we can kind of maybe see the best of him. And you never know, maybe 2021 is a better campaign. He'd stay healthy. They've kind of figured out his running style, all those things you pointed out. So yeah, it's not a stakes race. So we kind of gave you a little bit extra there. But that's one of the things, it's Magic's probably one of his favorite horses, talks about him all the time, as he should. Now we're going to kind of move forward to the San Gabriel. Again, you're Santa Anita. I'm going to let you take this away. How good was Another Twist of Fate? Was this a field that you can take something away from or anything like that? Obviously, Joel Rosario kind of going out there on the turf. If you're not aware, Joel Rosario on the turf is one of the better and more logical kind of things to go along with me being New York or New Jersey bias. And I believe Another Twist of Fate has another big race kind of on the radar. Kind of tell us what you thought and kind of the plan for Another Twist of Fate moving forward.
Yeah, so this race actually knocked me out of the pick 4. I played a really small pick 4 ticket, and it was especially small because of the next race. There was a very short-priced horse. I was like, this pick 4 isn't going to pay shit. So I don't want to go too deep here, and I don't want to go very deep, and I ended up going too deep here. I played both the Phil D'Amato horses, which were Bowie's Hero, and Count Again, who was the favorite. So it knocked me out, but this is something that it's Peter Miller on the turf, so that's usually a good thing. Joel Rosario is amazing out here. He's amazing anywhere. He comes to California, and it's like he plants his flag for a few months and just becomes the king immediately. It was a good effort from him. Bob and Jackie's a really good speed horse that held on to get second. Speed has been holding overall really well on the Santa Anita turf. It's not quite Gulfstream Park's turf course, but it's kind of close to that. So he ran well. The Pegasus World Cup is going to be next for him. They're keeping options open for the dirt or the turf. He was invited to both of them, but he's on the also eligible list for the dirt to get in. The turf he is in, so they'll probably end up running him that way. I don't want to say play against him in the Pegasus turf because I want to see who else is showing up, but I'm not super excited to play him. What'll probably be a short price. He was 5-2 here, so yeah. Aaron's right. I'd rather they focus on keeping drugged horses from winning every race. But hey, keep counting those whips. Yeah, that's exactly true. Aaron over the weekend, I think, just broke and just said, you know what, follow the drugs. And wherever the drugs are going, that's where you're going to find winners at Santa Anita over the weekend. And yeah, so, maybe he's right about that one. The biggest takeaway for me here is that this is going to get a little screwy for bettors for a long time, is that a lot of these tracks are saying no Lasix for the stakes races. If you're on the Derby Trail or not, at Gulfstream, Santa Anita, Naira, they're all saying no Lasix for any stakes races. Well, Count Again was the even money favorite, and as soon as Juan Hernandez asked him, he just had nothing in the tank. And so I haven't gotten an update yet to see whether he bled or not, but the fact that he was running on Lasix and ran that poorly when he was the even money favorite tells me that something probably came up a little bit there. So I'm willing to give him a pass slightly moving forward, but I want to know whether or not he bled. Otherwise, this is just a California turf field that doesn't have United, so I'm not excited about anybody.
Yeah, no, exactly. I believe another twist of fate before I not make my point, to tack on to yours, I should say, he'll be down in Gulfstream, I believe. Will he be there for the Pegasus turf?
Yeah, that's where they're aiming for him.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. I agree. If United's not running in the race, it's not maybe the strongest, but Aaron and I have kind of talked about this in the past. This looks like it was a solid lead up race for whoever kind of came out of here to maybe be in the Pegasus turf. So one can look at it that way, and that's fine. Obviously, connections, trainers kind of have their plan, and this might have been their plan to kind of see how they come out of it. To your point with Count Again, I don't know. Like you said, there might be something there, because for an even money horse, for a quality field like this, to kind of run like that, there's multiple lengths. We're talking like 20 plus lengths or so. It's just not something he's really done. And this was a good field, like you said. I think it was definitely worth watching if you could, but it's not like you kind of had to stop what you're doing and tune in because United wasn't there. Right. To your point, and I know a lot of people, we'll have a piece on our Eclipse Awards, kind of voting, and I know you're working on that. You do a great job with it, and it'll be available either later today.
It's up. It's on there. Yeah, I posted it late last night, but I was waiting to push it until people were awake this morning.
Fantastic. Right. Again, Magic is on the West Coast, so he's doing this really early his time. So you can go check that out. It'll be up if you get a chance, maybe after this or later in the afternoon, tonight, whenever you get some downtime, check that out. I know a lot of people put United as one of their turf horses. So I certainly did. So I'll give that one away. So it kind of just goes to show, if United's not in the field, it might not necessarily be the best field, but it's still a quality field. Another twist of fate. If you like to follow up after this effort, he will be down at Gulfstream in a few weeks' time now. So who knows? It's going to be another tough field, but maybe he could back it up and kind of put 2 and 2 together and run another quality race. The next race is the race I've been waiting all weekend and kind of the beginning of this week to talk about. How good is Life is Good? I guess that's a little pun there for everyone. And what do you make of this field? I'll start. I don't know if the field was great. He was kind of pushed. It's weird. At the top of the stretch, you kind of said, I don't know, Mike Smith's kind of got this wrapped up. You kind of look down the stretch and you're like, I don't necessarily know. Now, it could be a distance thing, trying it out. It could be a lot of things. It could just be the horse hasn't really run in a little while. And that's why I kind of want to ask you again. You're the West Coast guy. You're the Santa Anita, Del Mar, Los Al guy that I always like to go to kind of tell me what's what. How did you kind of see this? I know he was bumped at the start, but this wasn't a great field, and it kind of got a little testy down to the end there.
Yeah, so this is where I come in and say this is what a difference a year makes. A year ago, I would have sat here and said, oh, he's into mischief. He can't handle the distance. He was getting slow. He didn't know. Yeah, they're making excuses for it. And then I saw what they did with Authentic, and everything about how Life is Good has been brought along so far in his career looks like Authentic. He does a short debut dirt sprint at Del Mar, wins it pretty handily, looks pretty amazing, steps right up to the Sham Stakes for a second start, first time routing. Authentic looked better winning the Sham Stakes, but he still he looked a little green in the stretch there. I think that this horse is just as good as I thought he was when he won his debut, when he smashed it away. I don't care about the the margin, the 3/4 of a length there. Mike Smith said after the race that the whole way down the stretch, he was watching himself on the infield big screen, which you don't know at Sandy, they got a huge big screen like you're at an NFL game. So if you're in the stands, you can clearly see what's happening. And the horses tend to watch that a little bit. So Mike Smith said he was just watching himself, and I'm paraphrasing, he was dicking around in the stretch. He wasn't really trying that hard. And then when Mike saw on the screen that Medina Spirit was coming close, then he just showed him the whip. And if you watch, he holds it in front and just kind of waves it so the horse can see it in his eye line. And from that point on, Life is Good was fine. He was going to win. I didn't think that Mike had to really push him too hard. This is, again, also his second career start. He's an April foal, so he's a little farther behind than some of the other horses he was facing. You asked, you said this isn't a great field. No, the Sham never is. You usually get one good horse, usually a Baffert, and maybe the second place horse will win a Grade 3 in his career, and then the rest of them were 2-year-olds that did okay on the California circuit and aren't going to take a step forward as a 3-year-old. So Life is Good. I still have a strong confidence in him. Medina Spirit, I think, could win a Grade 3, and the rest of them, I'll see in an allowance at Santa Anita in a few months.
Yeah, exactly. A couple points to tack on, which everything you said was spot on. This was for 3-year-olds, mind you, folks. They were 3 years old for like a couple days. This isn't, and a lot of things, as you talk about, like you're going to see a lot of these horses. They're really like 2. I mean, if you're not aware, they're all the same age. So if you follow Mike Slim Spector, he said, "Happy, New Year's, happy birthday." Because that's the horse's ages for you. They're it doesn't matter when you're foaled, what sale you were at, none of purchase price, none of that stuff matters. January 1st, you're next year up, so you don't see maiden special weights for 2-year-olds right now in this moment. They're all 3-year-olds or 3 and up or 4 and up or whatever the case might be. So he was literally 3 for a few days. So he's really, to your point, Magic, 2, more or less. So that is one thing to factor. And I agree with everything you just said. When he was shown the whip, kind of picked up another gear. And, and one thing, it's always interesting. I remember Aaron talked about, a few of these things. Some horses have just never seen the whip before or have never felt it. And you don't know how they're going to react. It's kind of like, in some sort of ways, it's like a person. If you're going to flick them, they might not do anything, or they might be like, what are you doing? So every horse is different, and you don't know that. Obviously, they can't communicate with us. So I think it's just one of those things that this was a pretty good test for what I would still call, honestly, a 2-year-old. A really good test to kind of just get some distance into him. And to your point, even if he had lost, I wouldn't have lost any confidence. If he was bad, then that would have. But even if he finished second and got caught at the wire, I don't know if that really would have made that much difference anyway, because they're still obviously bigger and better for this one down the road. So to your point on Life is Good, I don't know. He wasn't. I don't want to say Life is great, but Life is certainly good when you're as talented as he is. We're going to talk about the Santa Ynez in a moment as we kind of move forward here. There was one race on Sunday that I wanted to talk about. And this was kind of towards the end of the card. This was another really, really good race. It's interesting. Again, if you didn't hear the theme at the beginning, Joel Rosario on the turf. I don't care if he's running in your local track in Wichita, Kansas. If he's riding anything, he's really, really good when it comes to grass races. So you might want to kind of tune in when he's on the grass. Calypso really, really, I don't know, 4-5, looked like 4-5. Probably could have extended that lead. The comment, if you guys can see or if you're paying attention live, it says dueled outside and clear. That's pretty accurate. She was really, really strong. In terms of Calypso, I kind of see her having the potential to go longer. Do you kind of see that, or do you kind of see more of, this 7-furlong distance for her? Obviously, you're not in the camp. You don't know exactly, but just kind of what you saw and kind of what you would do moving forward, or kind of how you saw this race play out.
I think that she's ultimately going to be best at one turn. If you look at her form, that's what she's done. She won the Enokia Stakes as a maiden on this course, sprinting. She tried stretching out last time, got second, but it wasn't a very impressive race. And then for her to now back it up and do this in a sprint, there's nothing wrong with deciding early that the horse probably is going to be Kentucky Oaks. It's Baffert, so I would assume they're going to try and maybe push her at least to the, I don't know if it'll be the Las Virgenes, which will be a quick turnaround, I think 3 or 4 weeks. But he might try and stretch her out and get some Kentucky Oaks points. But I think ultimately this is where she's going to be best served. I thought this was a 2-horse race. I thought it was between Calypso and Exotic West, who ends up finishing last. Exotic West is Gary Mary West homebred. Gary Mary West are one of Bob Baffert's best clients. They put their name in the horse. She looked amazing on debut. She got knocked around really hard in this race, out of the gate. Horses on both sides were hitting her repeatedly. It even says it in the comment section. So Mike and I both said we're going to scratch this race off and look for her again and give her a pass. So out of this race, those are the 2 that I like. The biggest impact for me is the fact that Frosteria is still a maiden, has now finished second 4 straight times, but she keeps finishing second to really good horses, including Moonlight Doro, who beat her 2 back at Los Al. Moonlight Doro is going to stretch out for the Las Virgenes. She could have gone to San Ynez, and it's a Richard Mandela horse that I have a tiny piece of, like Tis a Magician. And so they said they want to save her for routing because that's what she's going to be best at. So the fact that Frosteria finished second to Moonlight, then comes into this race, finishes second behind a really talented Bob Baffert horse, that makes me feel good about Moonlight Doro stretching out in that race. So not a lot to take from this. That's kind of what I hit on it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's interesting because, like you said, when a Bob Baffert's kind of attached to something, you kind of think Oaks or Derby. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her kind of test deeper waters just to kind of see if she can get it. And Magic brought up a great point on Exotic West. Usually when owners put their last name or a first name or a relative, whatever, some sort of logic behind a homebred especially, and not just even a purchased horse, but a homebred that they've really kind of brought up themselves more or less, you usually think that horse is talented. They're not going to do that with an AOC, allowance optional claimer, or even a regular claimer or starter allowance. They kind of want you to know that this is their homebred, this is their horse. So that's I completely agree. So that's always something to keep aware of, even if it's at a lower track. That's always something to keep in mind. One of the other trends I've noticed, and I was all over this I don't know if it was this past Saturday, I think it was the Saturday before. A lot of the horses coming from Los Alamitos that got a start towards the end of 2020 are in better form. That's not to say Exotic West, that's not why she was bad. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if you see, here it says last race, 2 of the 3 Los Alamitos runners, they finished first and second. And the third one, let's be honest, I know it says 8-1, never really looked good on paper. And I don't want to sound mean or anything, but she just isn't this type of field. So I think that is one thing to kind of factor in, especially as we hit the beginning part of January. As time moves on, you'll see some horses that come back off longer layoffs. They're not necessarily competing with horses that have just had that Los Alamitos race. So I think that's also something to keep in mind. You can agree or disagree. That's kind of something that I've noticed. So without further ado, we do have a sequence to cover at Gulfstream Park. It's nice having Wednesday racing because Gulfstream is like Saratoga in the winter time. They're running Wednesday through Friday, so it's nice to have something 5 days a week. And let's be honest, Monday and Tuesday, you need some time to kind of mentally recover, as we like to say. So we're gonna do that right now. We'll kind of get going there in terms of how we kind of look at this sequence. As most of you guys know, it's interesting because Aaron, like I said earlier, kind of covers the kind of race by race sequence, but of course, Magic wanted to take it upon himself to be different, and we appreciate that. So we will we'll both cover the pick 4 sequence, and we'll start here. Don't mind if I take a couple extra seconds because I'm navigating both screens. This was 16,000 claimers for 4-year-olds and upward. There's the 4-year-old again, usually mostly 3-year-olds if you look, going about 7.5 furlongs on the turf. And real quick, this is interesting. This is 2 turns on the turf if you're not familiar with Gulfstream. So Magic, I'll kind of let you kick it off. I'm going to scroll here at the bottom for everyone to see. You see my ticket, you see Magic's ticket, and I'll go back and forth here trying to, go back and forth with the entries. It's tough to kind of see all 9 of them there, but Magic, kind of how did you see this first race?
So this race was interesting for me. And first off, before I get into it, I just want to touch on it. So one thing that I learned quite a while ago is there are things everybody's good at in handicapping, and there are things everybody's bad at. And if I was to sit here and try to do what Aaron does, which is say, this is an exacta bet, this is a trifecta bet, I'd be doing everybody a disservice because I don't play those. I don't try to play those. I've never been good at playing those. So Aaron, Slim especially, those guys are really great at those. So that's what they're good at. There's a reason that the pick fours are the focus for the Magic Mike show, not just because Mike's really good at it, because I'm bad at everything else. But that's this race was interesting because there's a bunch of trainers that are really great with first time with a barn changer, first off of a claim, and their horses don't necessarily fit on paper other than that factor. So they made my tickets here. My top pick's going to be the 8 Dr. Shane. This is chalk. It is 5-2 favorite on the outside, but I'm going to bring this up again later because they're going to team up again. But trainer Danny Gargan, jockey Luis Saez, they're 50% at Gulfstream Park together with an almost $4 ROI. And why the ROI is important there is because if this is a coin flip, but it was like, a $2.18 ROI, it's like, okay, they're winning 50%, but it's a lot of chalk. When they're winning with a $4 ROI, that's saying they're getting some prices home too. We're not going to get a price here, but this is a horse that has never been this low, $16,000. It's exiting at $25,000 in the New York bred $25,000 claimers. Size was aboard 2 back for that New York bred's claimer. His 91 buyer on the Gulfstream Park turf is very strong. He has won here, actually, optional claimer $75,000. Almost exactly a year ago, he won it. He's got really good tactical speed. He doesn't have to be on the front end, but he can sit right there and press the pace. And I think that's why Saez is a good fit for him. So I put him on top. I also used the 4, the 2, and the 7. I'm sorry, the 1, the 2, and the 4. I skipped a race there. So those are the ones that I liked here. But since we both like the 2 and the 4, let's talk about the 4 first, since that was the second one for me. JP Hellish, 3rd start of the form cycle for Joe Orsino, has been really strong so far at this meet, 16%. He's a 7% trainer overall, so he's been starting hot at Gulfstream, so that's a good sign. On form, not a lot to love about this horse. He's got good early speed, but he tends to kind of speed and quit with the 3 horse to his inside, who also looks like early speed. Plus the 8, I was like, well, I don't know if I want to use this, but you're getting a huge jockey upgrade to Paco Lopez, and that Paco Lopez factor is something we talk about in the Magic Mike show a lot, where when he comes on, he can take a horse that is not winning at this level, that is speed and quit, and he can muscle them to hold on and do it. So that's why I like the 4, but what about you?
Yeah, I'm completely with you. If you're not familiar with Paco Lopez, he will get speed out of the horse, whether you want him to or not, or whether he wants to or not. That's the only way he knows how to ride. So it kind of looks like this is a match made in heaven, as I would like to say. The horse has natural speed. There is an upgrade. It's interesting. There's not a lot to love, but if you take a look at as you talked about the past performances, if you take a look at his odds, I'll read them off real quick. Obviously, we're obligated not to show that. So you see the morning line odds there. I'll read them off real quick. 58-1, almost 47-1, 17-1. Long story short, he's been out of his range. And I hate to say it, he's kind of running back here, but this field just isn't as tough as what he was seeing the last time out. So I completely agree. There's a lot to like about this horse if you kind of sift through the first layer of what you just kind of see. If you kind of, mix it in a little bit. It's weird. I'm not sure what his best distance is. They don't seem to have any interest running this horse anything shorter than 7.5, which is fine, but it kind of seems to me like he would be a little bit better. Not necessarily 5 furlongs, but maybe, in the 6.5 range. But what do I know? I don't own the horse. I don't train the horse. But I completely agree with everything you said. We didn't talk about the 1, Pagliacci, and I'll talk about him. It's going to be making his 28th start, which I always like. You like to see horses that kind of consistently stay in training, kind of consistently have that work pattern. One of the things I like about this horse, Steve Caceres is kind of all over the place, and I mean that in a positive way. He's got runners all over. One of the things that I've taken early on at this Gulfstream meet, and Magic, tell me if I'm wrong, what are we, like 3-4 weeks in now? 5 weeks, something like that, in that range?
Yeah.
A lot of the horses that have come from New York have done really, really well. And Magic, push back if I'm wrong here. It's because they know their horses are in good form, or just getting into good form. A lot of horses that kind of finish up with that last work, that last effort, maybe around Thanksgiving. They kind of take some time off and pick things back up back in February or March or even April. The horses that are running well, they want to bring down to Florida because they're still quality runners here, a little bit better than at Aqueduct. I'll be the first to admit it. So again, there's not a lot to like, but I think this is a big enough drop in class. And he's kind of the type of horse to me that looks like he needs more distance. It kind of seemed like this was his previous races were too short. His one race that he went at this distance, he won. That was a long time ago, but nonetheless, it's nice to see that they're doing something different. And Steve Clesteris is off to a 30% clip here. I think there's a lot to like. And Junior Alvarado was struggling. Maybe, again, I always say riders can only do with what their horses give them. But he's up to 11% now. He was at 2% just a couple weeks ago. Obviously, he's not a 2% rider, much better. But he's running well. So that was a horse that I kind of found a little interesting. I know he's chalk also. But I just really like the move. I'm with you on Dr. Shane. Is there anyone else you kind of wanted to talk to? We didn't get to talk about the 2 a little bit. Was that kind of someone – that was the horse that you liked also, right?
Yeah, so I misspoke. I'm used to seeing, when we do it, I'm used to seeing my name first and then Mike's name second. So when I just glanced at the screen and I saw the tickets, I thought that your ticket was mine. Okay. So I didn't use the 1. He would be he was the one that is kind of on the outside sitting in here for me. Okay. I don't love I think the class drop that you talked about is great. Second off of a layoff. Clasaris has been hot. It's all there. I don't think he's been the same since he left Linda Rice and Rudy Rodriguez, but this is the right class drop for him. So I won't talk. I was mostly trying to beat the price there. The 2, Zap Daddy, man, you want to talk about a horse that hasn't had good trips. 3 of his last 4 starts have just been shit trips. Really, really bad. Stuck wide in both turns, checking early, lacking room. It hasn't been great. That race 3 back, going this distance at Gulfstream Park West, that race, if he can duplicate that kind of a trip or maybe even get a better one with Jose Ortiz, I think that that's going to be the difference maker. Carlos David, 42% first off the claim. That was the fact that Ortiz is going to ride, and then David is so strong first off of a claim. Now he's drawn inside. So if he's stuck 5 wide in a turn from the 2 post, Jose Ortiz should be fired. So that was the only reason I used him. It's kind of the same reason that I like the 8 horse, and then also same reason I like the 7 High Heater. First time with Peter Walder, 23% with a positive ROI. Miguel Vasquez is very sneaky good. I've learned that from Mike Samich. And especially with Walder, they're 25% together with 75 mounts. So there's a big sample size to look at there. So those 2 horses I don't think necessarily fit. I wouldn't touch them, or the 4 horse probably in this race necessarily. But with the trainer changes, that's why I'm using them here.
Yeah, and it kind of, to your point, it's sometimes you don't like a horse, but you kind of just trust the process, and what I hate using that term, but you kind of trust the trainer is going to make a difference. And it's okay to take shots like that, especially if you have some prices in there. You might not want to touch it at a 5-2, but High Heater, like you talked about, 10-1 morning line, that's worth a shot. Especially in these types of sequences, we've talked about it. Aaron has talked about it. When you get to 16,000 claimers, you kind of want as much coverage as possible, just because these runners tend to be inconsistent. You have class droppers that might not even just be that good anymore. They're just trying to find a spot. So I'm with you. Dennis talked about the 9, Dexter Road real quick. I just question those races. Yes, the turf record is there. He's finished in the money in 8 out of 21 starts on the turf. The only problem with this horse, and I might be looking into it, forget about the layoff. I don't think that's necessarily a big deal. When you have a 7-year-old who's making his 58th start, they know when they're getting ready for the track. Let's be honest. The horse was scheduled for the turf on October 3rd and wasn't put back on the turf in his next start. That's always concerning to me. If he was, then I could say, all right, they wanted to get him on the turf, but they just kept him in there. And he was 3-2 entering the gate. He goes back on another sloppy track, and he wasn't scratched at anything. That's the only thing. It kind of seems like, all right, 2021, we'll throw him back on the turf. It just doesn't give me a lot of confidence. I don't know if you're in the same boat, if you even looked at him, but that was kind of the reason that I kind of took a pause and said I'll be willing to not use him.
So I'm against the 9 and the 5 horse Bowtie Affair for the very same reason. If you look at the conditions for this race, it's non-winners of one race since July 6, 2020. So this is different than an open 16K claimer. You could have won last week and gone into an open 16K claimer. If you won last week, you cannot come into this race. And so the big reason that I don't like the 5, that I don't like the 9, they're both coming out of these same races where they were facing horses that haven't won in the last 6 months. So, Bowtie Affair is in July, facing horses that haven't won all year long, and it's July. In September, he's facing horses that haven't won since February, March at least, and he still can't get the job done. You look at the 9 horse, he's been facing at this level in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his last 7 starts. How many times has he come close to winning those? None. So for me, it's simple that they're coming out of a lower level, which is to say they're at the same level than a lot of these horses that are coming. You got horses dropping out of an open 16K into this spot. They're out of an open 16K. That is a much tougher spot comparatively to horses that haven't done shit in a year. So that's why I was against those 2 horses specifically.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I guess the prevailing thought there is the more condition, the more, I guess, restrictions, I should say, on a claiming race, it usually means the horses aren't as good because you're trying to make it more of an even field. That's the whole point of it. Non-winners anytime you're not winning anything in 6 months, I don't care what you're doing in life, probably not that good. So, when now you're facing, as Magic kind of alluded to, open, that means there are no conditions. This is what the price is, X, Y, and Z, and you might have certain restrictions in terms of weight, but it's not necessarily the condition. So I completely agree. It's interesting. We're off those horses. Oh, at least I didn't talk about the 5. We're off the 9, but for 2 different reasons. Either way, we kind of came to the same conclusion. That's, as Aaron and I always talk about, that's the great thing about horse racing. You could be on a horse or not for a few different reasons. And let's fast forward to the next race, and I'll kick it off. This race is definitely much higher quality, 50,000 through 40,000. So this is what I was talking about before, 50,000, and for each 2 pounds, you're going to get a little bit of allowance. And you could see that if in your past performances for 4-year-olds going 1 mile on the turf. So that's 8 furlongs. This is going to be also 2 turns as well, the little run up into the first. I couldn't get off the 1 Majestic Row. This horse was gelded last time out. And just ran much better. I'm not going to get into the details necessarily of what geld it is, but if you ever are interested, you can always look that up. I gave Julien Leparoux a lot of garbage for the way he was riding. Brian Lynch, if you don't know, Brian Lynch is kind of based in Kentucky, and Julien Leparoux, more times than not, you'll see him at Kentucky, especially when they pick up. He's done a really, really, really good job of just, again, it might not be riding better, but the stock is definitely better. They're in better form. So I definitely like Julien Leparoux, and I've always liked him better on the turf more than the dirt. So that's kind of where I was. I also liked a couple of the horses that I think are going to come off of the pace. And one of the 2 reasons I did that, I think Majestic Row is going to be the prevailing speed, and I don't think he'll really be tested. So if it's relatively slow, you could easily see him go gate to wire. But the 2 horses that I really liked, and I really like Shooting the Breeze. For you said Danny Gargan. Danny Gargan's really doing everything right. It's interesting. We had Danny Gargan, Luis Saez last race that you touched on. Now Luis Saez will be coming from off the pace. That's not saying he can't come off the pace, but I definitely think he's a better, rider with some speed. So he's a better gate rider. But Danny Gargan's really just doing everything right in terms of all of his horses are coming here strong. And you could see, like we talked about a little bit before, Belmont, Saratoga, Aqueduct, coming down here with a purpose. It is a step up in class, but he's kind of proven that his runners deserve the benefit of the doubt. And the 7 Money, this is a step up in class, but not as big as you'd think. The allowance optional claiming races at Gulfstream, especially when you look into the fall, the conditions aren't as strong as what you'd see here at the winter meet. It's not that big of a deal, but I definitely think when you look at the purses, it's not that much of a difference. And I think that's another horse that I would just take a look into. I'm not as in love with Money as I am the one in the 6. But yeah, those are the three that I used. I went a little bit shorter here. Magic, who did you kind of focus in on, or who did you want to toss? Anything that stuck out to you?
Well, first off, I'm really glad that the 4 scratched Homeland, because this is a horse that I hate to play. This is a $500,000 son of American Pharaoh who hasn't raced in 11 months, was second beaten ahead in a turf stakes as a 2-year-old, and then we don't see him for a year, and he comes in for a $50,000 tag. And I'm like, God, I hate those. I hate those horses, because when I don't play them, they win, and when I play them, they're last. So thank goodness the 4 is scratched. I didn't like the 1 because I went and watched that last race, that $50,000 claimer. That horse had everything his own way up front. I mean, he had it nice and easy, and he had nice slow middle fractions, and he still couldn't get the job done. And to me, there's no difference between that and this race. And so when he was 12-1 there, now he's 4-1 here. I'm getting a third of the price in virtually the same setup. I like Julian Leparoux as a rider. I'm one of the few people who never got off of him when he was having some cold streaks, especially when he and Brian Lynch team up together. I think they're really well. So I wanted to play this horse. He is the first one on the outside looking in for me, but there's nothing that tells me that this race is going to be any different than last time, when both Battalion and my top pick, the 2, Please Call Me Back, ended up sweeping past him. I know that they're shortening up by a 16th of a mile, but if you watch that replay, that 16th of a mile wasn't going to help him. He was toast. Those 2 horses were flying. I love the fact that the 2 is adding blinkers for his first start off the claim for Mike Maker. That tells me Maker's been training him with blinkers at least once before. So he saw something that said, we should try this horse with blinkers in a race and see if it wakes him up. He wore blinkers in the fall of 2019 3 times, racing at stakes races at Woodbine. 2 of those were restricted Ontario breds, but still very competitive races. He got second in one of them. So we're going back to the blinkers. It's a 15% move from Mike Maker. It's not his strongest, but I like that he got the horse. He goes, all right, let's try tinkering with this a little bit. Now we're getting Jose Ortiz aboard. This is the best jockey that's been on this horse, at least in the United States. Maker's 19% first off a claim, 25% overall. And he's worked really well since then. So that's why I went with the 2 on top. You and I both really like the 6 horse, so I can talk about him next. Shooting the Breeze, getting a major jockey and trainer upgrade because, like you said, Gargan, Saez, gotta love it. There's a little bit of a price hike, but we're not too worried about that one. And then I also use the 8 Indian Counselor. I don't love to use Kenny McPeak horses unless I'm getting a price. I'm getting a price. This horse has only been on the turf 3 times. The first time it was a 1.8 miles at Keeneland when he was still a maiden, and it was yielding. Scratch that one out. It comes back on the turf at Gulfstream Park, going a mile, breaks the maiden, gets an 81 buyer, very respectable. And then they try and stretch him out to 1.5 miles. And guess what? 1.5 miles was too long. So now we're going back to the turf for the first time in almost a year. I think this horse is going to ultimately be a good turf horse. Painter is 13% turf route sire. He's not a great turf sire, but his best numbers are worth turf routes, and so I think that that's going to help this horse as well. Corey Lannery, Kenny McPeak, usually they run together at Churchill Downs a lot. They're 18% with a $3 ROI, so that's where I landed.
Yeah, no, if we're talking, it's interesting you talk about the 2 and the 9, and I'll scroll down a little so you guys can see the 8. I don't know if you were able to see it. I think you can now. I definitely like the price. The only thing about the 2, I completely agree with everything you said about the 8. I think that is a price, and you know sometimes you kind of have to work through the PPs, and that's what Magic just did there. You kind of have to work through to see the turf starts, and you are getting a bit of a price. The only problem with the 2 and maybe this isn't a big deal for you, some people do find this to be an issue, some don't. It's more so that this horse just doesn't seem to like to win. Now, it's possible that Mike Maker finds something different and just gets a little bit more. But I do not like it all. And I remember Mike Somich talking about he had a horse, I think it was a Pletcher Bean Counter. The horse just never won. And it's ironic, when I came on the Magic Mike show, the horse won. And I love Bean Counter on top. So I'm going against everything I just said then. But real quick before we move on, does that bother you at all? Because it bothers me, and some people, I think it's kind of like it bothers you or it doesn't, and it all depends on the horse player. To have 5 seconds and 13 starts, it shows that he's good, but maybe just kind of is a herd horse, a horse that likes to run with the pack. Did that enter your mind, or is that just something that's not too big of a deal to you?
It did a little bit, but his form recently, as a 3-year-old, as he was developing last year as a 3-year-old, he just steadily improved. So I'm not too worried about that. I also like the fact that Roger Atfield had trained this horse at Woodbine, loses him for $25K, and then buys him back for $50 out of that claim. I'm sorry, he had him, he lost him, and then he claims him back for 25 with his own money. Roger Atfield was the sole owner there, and then moved him up. So Roger Atfield's a really respectful trainer up at Woodbine. He's not an idiot. So the fact that he was trying to get this horse back and moved him up considerably, so it doesn't worry me too much, but it is a good point.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was talking about before, I think that's kind of just something that some people are bothered by, some people aren't, and it's just up to the horse player. I can't make a claim for or against that horse. And I also think, to Magic's point with Indian Counselor, the price is there. That's one I wanted to include. I just couldn't. At 5-2, I'm willing to leave. Please call me back off. Let's move on to the 9th race. And I was speaking about allowance optional claiming horses before. And we will get back to that here. This is the 9th race, so now we're attacking the back half of the sequence. Allowance optional claiming $25,000 for 4-year-olds and upward, going 1 mile on the dirt, and there's all these other conditions as well that you guys can read up on. So this is a 1-turn dirt mile, and these races are always interesting for a few different reasons. One, this is almost like an elongated sprint. You're going to see them kind of really start from like the way back, and then you're kind of see them make their way. It's kind of like Santa Anita a little bit. When they cross over the dirt a little bit, you're going to kind of see them enter the track. I thought this race was really, really, really difficult. There are 2 scratches out of here, the 3 Mr. Candy Ride and the 7 Palace Coupe. Where did you kind of see this race? This is in all seriousness, some horses are making their first start in 2021 and don't have a ton of experience.
Yeah, so for price purposes, for the cost of the ticket, I should say, I ended up singling here. I thought that the 4 Sunyan is a real standout. That last race, and by the way, I told you I like Brian Lynch and Julian Leperu together. Third start of the Forum Cycle for him, which is going to be really nice. If you look at how they handled this horse, starts out going through the maiden special weight ranks. Leperu, the 2 times he was aboard, second by neck, and then breaks the maiden. And then they decide, like you always do with a 3-year-old that has won, you go, all right, let's try the Kentucky Derby Trail. It doesn't, they tried the allowance levels, didn't quite work out, but look who beat him. New York Traffic ended up being pretty good on the Derby Trail. Gouverneur Morris, at the time, was looking like we thought he was going to be maybe a potential star for Pletcher. Doesn't work out for Sunyan, so they say, all right, we'll back off. We'll give him the summer to develop, and then we'll figure out what this horse is good at, probably 1 turn. They bring him back to Keeneland. Keeneland was nuts in terms of difficulty, especially at the fall meet, because everybody's trying to get ready for the Breeders' Cup, and it was like Saratoga and Del Mar's best horses crammed into one little meet. So the fact that he got second in that allowance on winners of 2 lifetime race was pretty impressive off the layoff. Lynch isn't super strong off of a layoff. And look at the horse that beat him, Nashville. Nashville's pretty good in his next start at the Breeders' Cup. And then the next race for Sunyan, now we stretch out to a 1-turn dirt mile at Churchill Downs. Look at those fractions. They went 22 flat, 44-3. This horse was pressing the pace 3 wide that entire time. The horse that was on the lead faded to be last. The horse that was also pressing the pace with Sunyan faded to third, 6.5 lengths behind Sunyan. The winner was Let Me Know. That horse won the Iowa Derby earlier in the year, was disqualified and placed second, but is therefore a stakes place horse in a first level allowance race that came by and won barely over that stuff. Yeah, I saw that. So I'm definitely gonna single Sunyan. The fact that he was so fast and held on, I don't think that there's no other horse in this race that can go 22 flat, 44-3 with this horse. And if they try and do it, they're gonna die real fast in here. So I think the Sunyan is very clearly the best horse in this race.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I'm using him. I'm not going to touch on anything you just said, other than the fact that his class, even though it might be similar levels to some of the others, the runners he faced, it was just unlucky. Like you kind of said, come back in October to face Nashville. Like, what are the chances? If you're not aware of Nashville, he was unbelievable, one of the best sprinters in the country. And you were also it's one of those things, you went to go face a sprinter on his home turf, not literally turf, but on his home surface, going 6 furlongs. He doesn't want to go 6 furlongs. And he ran into a beast who was just in great training. I hate saying this, but to finish second by less than 10 lengths is almost a miracle to a horse to a horse that wants to go a mile. If he was a sprinter, that's a different story. But he really looks like this was kind of not a workout, but it was brutal. 2 horses I wanted to touch on and let me get your thoughts after I walk through. The 2 is Don Bourbon. Now, I'm not the biggest Ian Wilkes fan. I do love that Jose Ortiz gets aboard. I think it's definitely an upgrade over Zayas and Leperoux, and that's fine. But I think he's gone longer than he really wants to go. He's, in the money, he's finished 2 out of 2 in the races. He's won one of the races. He's finished third in 2 out of the 2 races here at Gulfstream. This is one of those things, and you could say, and you could tell me, hey, well, look, he's finished second 3 times, third 2 times, and he's only won 1. But I'll make the argument that, the last time he won a mile, he won. Now, granted, it was over a muddy track, and it was a maiden special weight. And what did he come out of? What did that race provide? And I would say, Magic, you're probably right, but this is his best distance, I think. I definitely think, we talk about trips all the time. I think Sunyan, if I'm pronouncing that properly, will be on the lead. Don Bourbon's probably going to sit right off into that, what I would say, that mid-pack, that 3 to 5, maybe 3 to 6, 4 to 6, however you kind of want to play it out. And I think he's just going to get the trip. Again, I'm looking at this more for the price. I wouldn't be surprised to see the one looking at Roses take money just because of, the stakes last time out. And John Velasquez will obviously draw attention. So I think this horse might actually float up a little bit, and it's something to keep in mind. Jose Ortiz gets aboard for Ian Wilkes, and that's not a big-time combination. Ian Wilkes is Kentucky. Jose Ortiz is Gulfstream now, but New York, mostly Belmont, Saratoga. So I think that's an interesting angle. The 5, Ashar, is the horse that I just didn't know what to do with. And this was to your point before. Nashua against Independence Hall, fine, shouldn't be there. Mucho Macho Man here, literally about a year ago, I think 367 days ago, to be exact, if my math's correct. Fine, okay, doesn't belong there. He's not a stakes horse. He comes back off the layoff, and it's ironic. You see January to December. Well, that's not right. Well, in horse racing, it's January to December, and that is proper. And you see that long line. And that kind of, if you're not aware, we don't really talk about this. If you see a long line like that, that's indicating the layoff time. You could see above his next race, there's a shorter line. Magic, I don't know if you see this. If some people, maybe they don't have it, but it's indicating a shorter layoff. And no line is really less than 30 days. So it goes like 30, 60, 180, I think, something like that. So I'm looking at this horse and saying, look, he's not $650,000 like the purchase price back in 2018. That's fine. We know what he is, but it's interesting that to me that they don't want to get rid of this horse. Now you see a lot of times, though, Shadwell, especially, one of the bigger owners, has a lot of money. All right, we'll just get rid of this horse. Let's get him off the books. It's 2021. We don't need this. Todd Pletcher or someone might have said, I don't know, we can maybe get this horse back into form. And that could just be we're being stubborn. Maybe I'm looking into it. But this is second off the layoff. I just couldn't leave a Pletcher horse off. I know you did, and you singled Sunyan. And if I had to single, I would have done the same thing. I just couldn't let this horse beat me, is what it comes down to. So if you're not going to single Sunyan, I think you have to include this horse. And I'll throw it to you. If you weren't going to single Sunyan, or say Sunyan's out, where did you put Ashar? I'm not going to really ask you about Don Bourbon, but what did you do with the Pletcher horse?
Yeah, I looked at both of the 2 horses you use, and I don't have any issues with using them. God, this horse, Mike and I covered the sequence of that race, the December 2nd, his big return, and we were both really excited about him. We weren't the only ones. He went off at 4 to 5. Kieran McLaughlin is the former trainer of this horse. Kieran McLaughlin retired as the jockey agent for Luis Saez. So whenever Saez shows up on an old Kieran McLaughlin horse, it always catches my attention too. This horse was running without the blinkers for the first time, was extremely headstrong. You could see how close he was running to the pace there. Has completely quit, and that was 6 furlongs. That race was a mess. Now Pletcher adds the blinkers back on. There is no panicky class drop like you're talking about. Second off of a very long layoff. All the reasons say this could work. He just really pissed me off in that last race, and other than his debut at Belmont, he hasn't run an even halfway good race that convinces me that he could show up. Pletcher is trying something. If Pletcher hadn't added the blinkers, I'd be a little more concerned, saying that he's not changing anything. What the hell's going to be different here? So he's got that going for him. he just doesn't excite me. And again, the fact that he burned me so bad at 4-5, I'm not excited. If I was going to use a second horse, I'd actually use the 9, Summer Kid, all the way on the outside. This is a horse that like your 2 horse, Don Bourbon, is cutting back from a little bit. He went 9 furlongs at Saratoga. That was his first start after breaking his maiden, so a big step up. They also were shipping him from Gulfstream Park, where he broke his maiden, over this 1-turn dirt mile, up to Saratoga, much tougher class during the summertime. Happy Saver won that race. Happy Savers ended up being pretty good. Once Gaffalione figured out the Summer Kid wasn't going to be in the running, he never was better than 5th, he just kind of stopped. He eased him across the lane. So the fact that he was beaten 24.5 lengths, he wasn't going to win that race. I'm okay with that. He's not facing any kind of Happy Saver types in this spot. Gustavo Delgado is pretty decent off of a layoff like this, 17%. He's 31% on dirt allowance races, and he's really good with Zayas. Those numbers are a little skewed because of the summertime, when the competition is a lot easier at Gulfstream Park. So that's another reason why I ended up singling, because I could find enough holes in all of these other horses that the 4 was the only one that I really liked.
Yeah, no, and to back your point, one of the things that, the competition at Gulfstream is definitely softer over the summer, I should say. But Edgar Zayas rode that day. I liked the fact he would get aboard. Again, I didn't use this horse, I'll be honest, but I could definitely see why this horse makes sense. Definitely a horse that you'd want to include. And when you go to face an allowance at Saratoga, and it's kind of the same thing at Del Mar, it's like these horses, you can make the case, they're really like almost small stakes races. Some of these races are absolutely brutal. And like you said, to face Happy Saver is not necessarily a bad thing. You just ran into a really tough allowance field. Some are better than others, and that's fine. Let's move on to the last race of the day. I know Magic, you guys could see he kind of hit the all button. So I'll kind of go, and that's fine. This is one of those races that I didn't love either. There's another big scratch out of here, and maybe that kind of affected your opinion, and I'll let you kind of hit on all of them in a minute. Croy, the 2 is out. Again, you can't see the bottom of the field, and I'll scroll down a little bit. I like the 4 playing hooky. 9-2. Now I'm going to make it real quick. It is a long layoff, and literally 2019. Now we hit 2021. What are we talking now? 14 months? I don't know, or 13 plus months, whatever. I just think this is the proper start. One of the things about the layoffs I like when it's a horse with speed. The reason I say that is because they know that they have to get to the lead. And again, their horses, you understand. This just seems like a perfect match where Luis Saez gets aboard. Again, for a trainer he doesn't ride for often, just because of where they're located. Again, Luis Saez, Gulfstream, New York, same thing as Jose Ortiz. Rusty Arnold, that's Kentucky. So I think that's an angle that I like. I also like the 6 Farley, Antonio Sano. I think this field's wide open. Aaron and I have talked about this before. These starter optional claiming races, even though the conditions might not indicate that it's much of a difference, they're definitely better. This was just a horse that, again, Jose Ortiz gets aboard. It's a massive upgrade. He hasn't won in a long time, which is a little concerning. Obviously, $410,000, not quite worth the investment at original. But the last time he was in the claiming ranks at $18K, wasn't that bad. And you got to take into account the odds. If you don't get a chance to watch the replays of races, that's fine. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. Magic has the chance to do it. I have the chance to do it. This horse actually grabbed the lead and just kind of gave it up. If you look at the first half, 47 flat. Now, again, some people call times differently. Almost 47-1, which is 47.2. That's pretty quick. If you're able to hold on, and he wasn't, but it showed to me that if things can get slowed down a touch and the field's not as good as that one, he might have a chance to do it. So that was a horse that I liked. Again, I really liked Croy. I'm sure you did also. So I'll throw it to you. Kind of tell me what you thought of those 2 horses, and kind of tell me your thought process as to why you went hitting the all button. And I couldn't disagree with that decision at all.
Well, I was going to be all before Croy scratched because I thought at 2-1 he was a little vulnerable. And this is Danny Gargan first off the claim, 56%. And I was thinking that. And a big reason is because we've talked about already, he and Luis Saez really fantastic together. Luis Saez was on this horse. I would have expected him to get the mount through the claim. Saez didn't do it. Saez says, no, I'm going to ride a horse for playing hooky that hasn't been seen in well over a year. So that kind of made me think, all right, maybe Croy is beatable in this spot. So I was really hoping I could get an inflated price somewhere. So these morning lines are going to be lower for a lot of them. Listen, I think this 7, Honolulu Express, has got as good a chance as anybody. This was a horse that pretty much at this same level, for an open 16K claimer, missed by a neck, and he's 22-1. We're not going to get 22-1, but that was his first time on the turf going a mile. He hadn't gone 2 turns on the turf since September of 2019, so he's got plenty of good speed. Christian Torres is a very strong jockey at Gulfstream Park that tends to get overlooked, especially at the championship meet, but this horse has got plenty of potential. The trainer stats aren't fantastic, but I like the fact that this is a 3 for 73 barn last year, 4%. But in claiming races, they're 8%. So 8% on its own, not that great. You compare it to 4%, hey, he's twice as good. So I like that angle. I like that you're playing the little Farley, Dr. Miranda angle with the 6. Not a bad spot. Jose Ortiz is definitely an upgrade over Torres. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Torres chose the 7 over the 6, but a good spot. To me, once you take away Croy and whether or not you think he's vulnerable, I think this race just gets kind of wide open. And I personally hate these low-level claiming races on the turf. This is where Mike Somich is best, is at these low-level claiming races on turf. I hate them, so any chance I can use to try and go all, I will. It's also worth noting, this is an exact replica of the first race of the sequence, race 7. They're both $16,000 claimers, non-winners of one since July. So again, you have horses that are coming out of open 16K claimers. That's a better level than what this is. So make sure you kind of look at, they were in claiming races. What were the conditions for that? Who were they facing? You've got the 4 playing hooky is coming out of 35,000 non-winners of 3 lifetimes. So that's from a long time ago. But again, you just kind of have to look at those at these claiming level conditions to try and give yourself a little bit of an edge as a handicapper.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And this looks like the race with Croy coming out. And like you said, you were kind of thinking Croy was vulnerable anyway. I didn't necessarily think he was, but in saying that, whether we thought he was vulnerable or not, he's out. And I think this was, as I like to say, he's a tier A horse compared to this field. Now it looks like the rest could be in tier B. I think we could all make a claim or a case, I should say, for almost the rest of them. So this is where you say, you know what, if I'm going to play 4 of them or 5 of them, I might as well just take them all. And that's kind of what you did with, you singled Sunyan. So it's very interesting. Again, like you said, Mike Somich is good at these races. And this is kind of what Aaron talks about. If you're good at a certain type of condition or a certain type of race, that's where, just kind of focusing on those races might be better for you. So, to Magic's point, he's better at multi-race or bigger type of, not necessarily more money, but, more of a sequence type of thing. So that's where you focus on. You can't bet everything. No one has the budget to do that. But at the same time, it's really nice if you just took one meet or a couple weeks or months to just kind of focus in and see what you do best. So to Magic's point, he's like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. Let me take as many as I can, a.k.a. I'll take them all. And I hope that if Sunyan pulls through and Magic's home to all of these horses, you will see a good payout with a bunch of them, and they won't be that much worse than my 4 playing hooky or the 6 Farley, both of which you like. Obviously, we hope that we can get them all home together. We could combine here, but and that's just kind of the horse playing way, like we talked about earlier. You can have opinion A, opinion B, but if you get to the same conclusion of A and B, you're kind of seeing the race properly. And I always value what you say, especially we were talking about Santa Anita. It's nice to know that if you have trust in someone and how they view the races, that you're kind of seeing it the same way, even though you don't get the same process, 2 + 2 is 4 or 1 + 3 is 4, you're getting to the same conclusion. So at the end of the day, we kind of both like the 4 and 6 here. Before we wrap up, we will read off our sequence. I'll go first. I went a little bit heavier and I kind of decreased the amount of horses I was going to use. Starting in race 7, I used the 1, 2, 4, 8 with the 1, 6, 7 with the 2, 4, 5 with the 4, 6. Again, I kind of decreased my way. I kind of really like these 2 at the end. Magic, I'll let you read off your ticket.
So I'm going to go 2, 4, 7, 8 with 2, 6, 8, singling the 4, hitting the all button. It's $48 after scratches. If you wanted to go a little deeper, I think I'm most vulnerable in the second leg. The one horse is Lone Speed, and Lone Speed on turf at Gulfstream. Even though I didn't love what happened in the horse's last race, that horse is still dangerous from that perspective. So if you wanted to add the 1 to my ticket, it's going to be $64, and that ends up being right at the ceiling for what I like to spend on a pick 4. If you think this is going to end up going a little chalky, I wouldn't recommend going that expensive. You see Ricky's ticket's 36, I'm 48. I wouldn't spend more than $50-$55 because this thing has a potential to chalk out, and you don't want to end up getting back less than you paid for the ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. We'll always keep in mind, folks, this is Wednesday afternoon. This is Gulfstream. There might not be as much as you're going to see what we just saw at Santa Anita over the weekend, or even Gulfstream over the weekend, or Aqueduct over the weekend, whatever the case is. Keep that in mind when, again, not only do you want to save your bankroll for the weekend potentially, but at the same time, there won't be as much money in here. And to Magic's point, this easily could chalk out where your return is $80-$90 potentially, maybe even a little shorter depending on what gets hammered. But for Magic's case, we will root for everyone if I'm not alive. Hopefully we can get Sunian home. If I'm not alive, let's root for the all button. But as always, everyone, thank you for watching, tuning in here Wednesday. It was a great week for the Rockets last week. We were able to bring home a ton of tickets, especially Saturday, the late pick 4, 5, and the pick 6 from all 3 tracks on Saturday, which was really, really nice. Definitely a nice way to kick off 2021. I'll be back tomorrow with that from no Santa Anita tomorrow. So just Aqueduct and Gulfstream. Unfortunately, folks, it's upsetting to say. And if you get a chance, look at the Eclipse Awards that we kind of put together. Well, I shouldn't say we. I helped give my input, but Magic, Curtis himself really did a great job with it. It's really, really nice. The format, the layout, super easy to read. And it's kind of, I guess, a brief summary of kind of what we thought. Again, a lot of opinions will be the same as Magic kind of instructed us. Just put down who you like. It doesn't have to make sense. This isn't a real vote. So it's a little interesting, and you'll see some things that are funny, some things that you agree with. So tune into that as well. I mean, as always, Magic has his show, the Magic Mike Show. When are you guys going to be back on this week?
We are back on tomorrow, Thursday. We record at 5:30 live. We do it 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific on Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays is like kind of our recap show where we talk about, our tickets from the past weekend and what we learned and handicapping lessons we can take moving forward. And then Thursdays is our Pick 4 preview show. We are going back to Sam Houston Raceway Park. They are opening tomorrow, Friday. Friday's opening day, I think. They're doing a mandatory pick 6 payout on Saturday, so we're going to tackle the last 4 legs of that. And then also probably Friday night there will be something Sam Houston related, because Mike and I do love that track. They got really low takeout. They were the first one to really drop their takeout to try and entice horse players to show up, and it worked really well for them. So you get a lot of good fields. You have a lot of trainers that come in. Steve Asmussen tends to be the king there, but Steve Asmussen is also vulnerable, so you can get some really monster payouts if you find the right Asmussen to play against. And I already talked to Mike. He's already got at least one picked out. So if you want to try and make some really good money with a 12% takeout at Sam Houston, come join us on Thursday. Yeah,
definitely tune in there. That show will definitely give you more information than I ever can give you. So definitely tune into that. Again, follow along all social media, Racing Dudes, Curtis, mine, always stuff going on there. But without further ado, thank you again. All the information is here. Thanks for tuning in, and we will be back tomorrow. Aaron Halterman will be back. He'll be driving or whatever he's going to be doing. So he'll be from his car. But that is it. Again, everyone, take care. Good luck.